Welcome to the Productivity Show, a podcast where we believe you can get the important things done without sacrificing your health, family, and things that matter to you. My name is Brooks Duncan. I'm the COO of Asian Efficiency, where we help people become more productive at work and in life. And today is another Wisdom Wednesday episode where you'll get actionable productivity advice in less than 10 minutes. And today's topic is a time audit. This is one of the 25 skills we teach as part of our 25X productivity system, and it's so important. Why is that? Well, think about it. The number one things many people say about their productivity is, I just don't have enough time to do anything, or I'm just always so busy all the time, right? Have you ever said either of those things? Well, it's why the T is the first part of our T framework, the 3 levels that impact your productivity: time, energy, and attention. And so the question is then, how can you improve your time in the future if you don't know how you're spending it now? So if we agree that maybe time is something that you need some help with, then the question becomes, how can you improve your time in the future if you don't know how you're spending it now? It's kind of like investing for retirement, right? You need to know how your current investments are doing if you know that you're heading in the right direction. You know, vibes don't work for retirement savings, and they don't work for productivity either. So to solve this, we call it the time audit, and that's what we're going to talk about in this episode. And big picture, there are 2 ways to do a time audit. Number 1, track your time and then review that tracking later. And number 2, look back and review your calendar periodically. And I'm going to take you through both of those steps and how you can apply them and improve your own productivity and gain back more of that time and freedom that we talked about earlier. And let's start with number 1, track your time and review later. And tracking your time sounds like it could be a pain, or maybe you've tried it once and it didn't really work out for you. And I'll be honest, it can definitely be a pain depending on how you do it. So many of us set an intention that we're going to start tracking our time, and we start and we make progress at first, but then the habit just kind of falls away. I've done it. Everybody's done it at some point. However, there are ways to track your time without a lot of effort. It really can be done, and that's what we're going to talk about today. The first question you want to ask yourself is, do you need to track every minute of every day? I think that's where a lot of us get off track, right? We get way too granular and we spend time tracking a bunch of stuff that doesn't move the needle. And maybe if you bill your time or you need to report it to somebody, then sure, of course, track everything. That makes total sense. But for the rest of us, a lot of times broad strokes are okay. Only you know where you are on that continuum. So how do you track your time? Well, this is an area where you can get really, really geeky if you want, but you don't have to. Productivity and tech podcasts are full of people using apps and automations and shortcuts to do tracking, and this can all work really, really well. I'm definitely not saying don't do it. There's apps like Toggle, Timery, Timing, Rescue Time. We'll have links to all of those in the show notes, and way more than that, and they'll let you track your time. And some of them you have to start and stop timers to track it, and some of them will actually watch what you do on your devices and then automatically records it, and then you go in and then it will try to bucket your time, and then you can go in and tweak it later. And these apps can be really enlightening, especially the ones that do automatic tracking, because a lot of the times the way we think we're spending our time is very different than the way that we are actually spending our time. So you can actually get a lot of value from one of these things that records everything that you do. So that could be somewhere you want to start just to get a baseline. And so time tracking apps are great and we can all learn a lot from them. The only problem is they can get really, really fiddly. And a lot of times you spend so much time in these apps reviewing, categorizing, tweaking, automating, and playing around that it takes away from the things that you should be doing. So if you're going to use these time tracking apps, I'm definitely not saying don't. You just want to be careful. Now, another much simpler alternative is to just keep a rough log of how you spend your time. It can just be really, really simple. It can just be on a notepad beside your desk or something like that, or that you carry around with you, and basically just write down in blocks what you work on. So for me, maybe it's 9 to 9:15 daily huddle, 9:15 to 9:45 automation for our 25X program that's coming up, 10 to 10:45 podcast show notes, maybe 10:45 to 11 research buying a new printer, which is my least favorite thing to do, but that's what I'm doing right now, and so on. You're not necessarily recording anything, you're just getting the broad strokes of what you do. And keeping a simple log of how you spend your time might be not as granular or accurate as, say, a time tracking app, but you may get like 80% of the value with only 20% of the effort. So it's definitely something to look at. However you track your time, just make sure to periodically review that information, maybe on a weekly basis or a monthly basis. Probably weekly is better, but whatever you can fit into your schedule. There isn't really much point in tracking your time if you're not going to use that information to improve going forward, right? That's what we're trying to do with this time tracking. So you want to ask yourself questions like, are you spending more time on something than you thought? Are you spending time on something that you could eliminate or delegate? Are you shortchanging important projects or areas of your life? Maybe you're not spending as much time on something as you think you were. That could be a red flag. So maybe you should find a way to allocate more time to something. So these are the questions you want to ask yourself as you're reviewing your time tracking. Now, speaking of reviewing your time, let's go on to time audit strategy number 2, and that is to look back and review your calendar periodically. Time tracking is great, but there's another super effective way to do a time audit, and that is reviewing your calendar. After all, if you think about it, your calendar should be a pretty good representation of how you spend your time throughout the week. It has your meetings, your appointments, maybe it has space carved out to work on certain tasks, and so on. Not everything's going to be on your calendar probably, but a lot will be. The only thing is, a lot of us never ever look back at our calendar once a day is done. Once we move on to the next day, we never look back at the previous days, which is too bad because our calendars can really be a goldmine of useful productivity information. And the best part is this takes almost no time at all, just a couple of minutes. And it's really, really simple. You just every week look back at your calendar and ask yourself, how much flow or focus time did you have? Was it enough? When you plan your week next week, try to prioritize more of that. Then you want to think, what on your calendar could you get out of in the future? Maybe there's something you could delegate. Maybe there's something you can cut. Is there anything on your calendar that you ideally should spend less time doing and then try to, again, going forward, spend less time doing it? Everything involves trade-offs, but at least by reviewing your calendar, you'll know where you stand. And ideally what you want to do over time is increase your ratio of focus time to wasted time. You won't be able to get all of it right away. It's definitely a process, but if you make small improvements every single week, it'll really pay off. It's like what we say on our TPS Plus annual t-shirts, 1 tweak a week. And really it's all about that, and you'll be surprised how effective it can be. So for your action item this week, for the next week, track your time. Either do it using an app or just broad strokes on a notepad, whichever works the best for you. And then at the end of this week, review your calendar and try to make one tweak to improve your focus time to wasted time ratio. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.